Hi people, as you know, I need a visit to Kremlin to picture the mud flood evidence inside of it, but as you can see the huge line wouldn't let me have a chance to do that time, so I decided to visit it and attach the new footage in the second part of my notorious documentary. So if you walk around the Kremlin, you probably find a bunch of those so-called basement floors in the buildings of 19th and 18th century. And you know, you can't find anything older around the Kremlin, so everything is like 17th, 18th and 19th century. So those pictures that showing us so-called abandoned Kremlin in Moscow, maybe showing us the progress that they made cleaning it up, but this documentary is not going to prove that, because we cannot just go back in time and check it out. We cannot confirm the pictures with no people. All I know is that history was changed in the end of 19th century and the beginning of 20th, so we can, you know, lose the paradigm, and it was faked and was edited, so we cannot understand what was really going on before that event, that global or worldwide event, if you want, that changed the history, that changed the paradigm, that changed the controlling elites. And first of all, I want to start and kind of classify the evidence of mud flood in this video. So there's evidence in the so-called restored houses that are under restoration, that covered with some clothing and stuff like this. So, but you can, you know, if you have enough time and willingness to research, you can do that. The other one is the basement floors that are right now controlled by some stores or maybe inhabited, like we have in New York, where we have also a bunch of basement floors, and you know, throughout the United States and England and Europe we have so bunch of them. So you can, you know, if you have a chance to visit them, you can go inside and you maybe talk to owner. Maybe he can show you around, and you can find that those basement floors are not that simple as they look. So the Kremlin, what is wrong with Kremlin? Kremlin is so high, so you can see the relatedness of the people walking around. And if you go all the way to the top through this bridge, you can visit actually the Kremlin. And you know what? I've been showing you, the pictures show that the floor is even up on the top of this tower bridge, right? And this is all the way to the left and to the right. So the Kremlin is buried on the top, it's buried. But you can say, oh, all right, that could be a hill or something. I'd say, okay. So I went to the countryside to picture some evidence here, and we're gonna start with this excavated first floor of this church. It's not excavated much, but I think they have another buried floor underneath. This is supposed to be proven yet, but anyways. So the last one is excavation. As on this church, the excavated churches are all around Russia, and probably some of them are also in Europe, if of course they are not renovated that much, so you cannot see that. But as for example, this church was excavated, and you can see about 3 meters of excavation here underneath where I'm walking, and it's all around this church. So they excavated it because this is not a basement floor. It was hard to maintain a church with no basement floors as a basement floor church. Okay, you have to understand that it ruins the walls if they are not having enough insulation. But those people in this church just yelled at me for me walking around, and you know, didn't let me picture it. They even called some policemen. As you can see them on the left, they already there and warned me not to picture here anything. I said, you don't have any, you know, warning signs here for not to picture. They say this is not really my problem, so I wanted to walk away. So I walked around this church, and here in front of me is the whole Sri Lanka street, and so-called famous Sri Lanka quarters. They're famous for having officially announced that they have these underground facilities all around, and this is just, you know, a few steps from this church. So we're supposed to believe that this church was, you know, I don't know what, but I think it was buried, just like those underground facilities, which could be the streets and of the ancient cities of Moscow, because Moscow have a bunch of it. So talking about excavation and this, you know, what could be burying stuff, so they supposed to be starting the excavation. So it's not like a soil instability, right? Because if you build some construction like this, some complex construction like this, you're supposed to know all these soil laws of physics, you know, how soil moves, how all this stuff, you know, how to you know, what is the thickness of the walls, what is the thickness of the basement blocks, and all this stuff. You're supposed to know all of this if you're an engineer. Otherwise you cannot be, you know, building something like this, because it's very hard to believe that those engineers were so, you know, dumb not to know about the soil instabilities, and so their buildings would be, you know, sinking inch by inch each year, and they're supposed to be like, you know, they didn't know that. But the walls are not cracking, as you can see, because the soil instability makes the walls crack, and the basements are cracked, and without any reconstruction, and any signs of it are missing here. So this church is perfect, you know, it's very good contained and maintained and preserved, and a bunch of tourists visit it, you know. So this is not a point. So 5 feet of excavation doesn't make any sense either, because if they have a basement floors and they just, you know, hiding it from us, I don't think so. I think they're using it, but they don't showing it to the outsiders. I think that's it, because if you look to this bell tower on the right, it has a buried arc in it, and if you match this arc to the basement floor, which is not showing here because it's not excavated, you can understand that that was probably the height of the building, and it was with another floor which is not right now buried. So how could that happen, that those people are using this church right now and not knowing anything? Are they so dogmatic, or they cannot see that this is a buried ark? Who can, you know, who can say that this is not a buried ark? What do you do? What would you do this building so small for? So let's kind of walk around and see if we have any more evidence of buried floors. As you can see, this church is close to some type of a lake. I think it was just a creek which is right now filled with water. So it's like not a natural huge lake here. There's nothing like more than a stream, maybe a little, and that's it. So I don't know what could be a reason for this lake to be like this. I think this is just a huge flood came, and this is the way that the water was, you know, flushing. So maybe towards some direction which is close to this church, and that's why this is all buried. I don't know what else to explain. If we walk around, we also find that pretty mansion here, which was supposed to be So this pretty mansion has a history since the 16th century. So it's kind of older than in ordinary you are able to find in Moscow. So it's like first it was pretended to be the Boris Godunov's, who was Russian, one of the Russian czars also, and he also built these winds close to this mansion, 2 winds houses, and the church itself, and they call it the God's transferment, I think. So it was like a huge wall around it, but we don't have any wall right now, as you can see. So it was called the fortress. I think it was even a stop fortress, I don't know, but we don't have anything right now, so we cannot, you know, kind of prove that. During the so-called muddy times, there was a stop of Dmitri, who was like a Polish fake Russian Tsar, and he was, you know, pretending to stay here with his wife, and maybe not wife, but the Marina Mnishik. So in the 17th century, the Peter I let this house to be the Boris Golitsyn, and so he's kind of restored the house. The huge house in this Bolshevizome Golitsina, which was supposed to be built in 1784. This one, right? So, and it was also built 2 small houses, as I said before, on the winds. So the Pushkin, the famous Russian poet, been here a couple of times, and he wrote the Evgeny Onegin famous poem, and so this was supposed to be the Onegin's house. This is a Pushkin, and the mansion nearby, which I could visit maybe a little bit later, was supposed to be Larin's house. But you know, in this mansion, even Napoleon was standing here on the 13th September of 1812. So it was kind of interesting to me to visit this house and to see what's inside, to understand if this is really 18th, 19th century. Could there be any mud flood evidence inside? Because you know, very pretty house, very pretty mansion, a bunch of these burial mounds around it. I can see them, they're still here, and buried windows showed me that I should go inside and check it out. Luckily they had a visit time here, and it was kind of a museum, so we bought a ticket and went inside to see what could be, you know, proving us that we are right. So we didn't go to the small houses with those small evidence, as although we can see some signs of something. We went to this big house, and you know, it really does. Yes, it has 1784 on the top of it, and small houses have basement floors, as you can see them, but this is the Golitsyn himself. He was, you know, building this mansion. A whole bunch of these Malta crosses here, and this is Pushkin again, famous Russian poet. So this is me. You're supposed to descend to look inside this mansion. So as you can see, the level is very low. Okay, so you walk around all these different rooms that's supposed to, you know, have artifacts of 19th century and even older ones, but generally it's all fake and made up stuff, although some artifacts like this light bulb is very interesting. I thought that was a griffon there, but that was not. A bunch of those stars on the floors Probably they are Masonic. A bunch of ruinistic pictures where people walking around those antique columns and all this stuff, or maybe ruins like this one. So it's like they like mocking us, I think, showing us all these antique pictures here. But anyways, this is the way the place is supposed to be looking in the end of 19th century. A whole bunch of this symbolism everywhere. I hope I be a symbol reader to understand what's all they mean, because it's supposed to mean something, and everything matters. Everything on those paintings, on those desks, have something to say. Because if you look closer, you see the symbolism. Although you don't understand it completely, but you understand it does mean something. All those cones, all those angels. This is not just like this. And putting those pictures inside is not for fun. All those Masonic pictures here. The books inside that you cannot touch, you cannot read them. A bunch of pictures of unknown men and plans of ancient cities. It's all supposed to be researched. You can, like, go to this Masonic room and you can see like a whole bunch of artifacts here. Of course they don't show us everything, but they show us something. So this Duke was a complete Mason, just like Pushkin was, and the symbolism of crow here, just what I've been talking about. This was the end of the previous civilization, and they had it removed by those who we know right now as Masons. Maybe not all the Masons were in this conspiracy, but somebody supposed to be the one who are implementing all this new stuff, all those new arts, new sculptures, new editions of books, and new editions of houses, renovations, and all this stuff. So really important to understand the symbolism, to read those people, to read what is fake, what is not. Because looking at those portraits, if you don't know those people, if you don't know their stories, you cannot understand what was edited, what was not, right? And they don't let people to touch the books, to read the books. I think mostly all those books are just fake books, but who knows, maybe some original books are still left in those libraries. So this is not just the end of the research, guys. You have to look around the books in the museums, you have to look around the pictures, you have to look around, and not just for the buried floors, but to see if there's any symbolism that's showing us that this was really the case. Okay, because people start and criticize us for just so much speculations that some authors let themselves to do that, and people start and criticize. I think I'll have it in the second part if we have some decent critics on the case, because right now we have only critics, only people that I don't even know, like different channels that I don't even know, and they like trying to debunk not me but them. So I don't know what to answer that, because I was not supporting totally what was in those films by those authors. I try to make my own, and that's why I don't try to be affected by anyone else. So all those symbols are showing us that really this is the case, and this could be the Masonic addition to anything, and they can do it easily, like the fireman or bomberos can do the intentional burning of evidence. Masons can do the intentional inverting of the sense in ancient literature, ancient art, sculpture, and everything else, and architecture, of course. So that's why they call themselves Masons, I think, because they can invert and rebuild any ancient construction and use it. Look at the toys of the 19th century. Those kids play with those small thing, and they could be, you know, handmade or could be produced. Who knows? This is really a tough job to do this. As you can see, it's all detailized and very good quality, very decent quality. So kids played with all this stuff, and there's even a picture of one kid, but I don't think it's very old. And we see some toys are still left, so it was kind of decent quality, and I wouldn't say that they were saving on their kids. I think their kids having all they could have because they were kids of noblemen. So if you descend the ladder, you can see some arrows in construction where windows are sticking in the ladder. Well, staircase is not very much matching the house. By the way, they show us a couple of ancient windows here, and they really look like ancient. If you descend down to the basement, you can see this so-called hall room. Remember that small window on the other side when I was picturing it in the front of the house? So probably they're doing some Masonic rituals here, I bet. But here you can see the window in the basement, and another window which is not matching the construction, right? You can see it's something that was rebuilt here. So this is the end of this excursion, and I was lucky to find those pictures of renovation here. They left it all in the end of the excursion. You can see them, all those pictures are here, and they showing us that they were rebuilding also the basement floor, so-called basement floor. And as you can see, it's not a basement floor, it's really a huge floor underneath. And maybe they have a basement floor underneath, who knows, because it's a huge reinforcement that they done here. Look at the windows, they didn't have any heaters, so how could they hit the house? I was asking those people, how could you hit the house? And they said, oh, we don't know. That's basically what they say. We're gonna talk about the hidden systems of ancient houses a little bit later, maybe in the third or fourth part of this documentary. But the first part should be ended with this street near the Solanka district. As you can see, those houses look completely excavated from the side and buried from the front of it. So it's not very hard to understand that this was excavated, and the level of ground shows that this evidence is correct. So is this house. So excavation is not just, you know, an ordinary thing. Excavation was done where it could be done or could be done cheaply, and they did it. Where they could be doing it, they didn't do it, because maybe that could be revealing some evidence. People didn't want it explained too much, so they did it the way they did it, and we cannot, you know, judge them. Just imagine how to completely unearth the whole city, right? So they did it the way they was cheaper and was more effective for them, because excavating the streets is just a half of the deal. You have to excavate the basements and, you know, unearth them. So it's like very expensive job. So a bunch of those excavated streets here, and they are not leveling with the actual level of the ground of the road. And this is, of course, doesn't match with the horse crap theory, even though, as you can see, this church was outside the big roads where no horses could be producing so much crap. There's still a good explanation of cultural layers, but you know, they don't work very much, because once you start excavating, you don't see cultural layers, you see just ordinary clay everywhere. So those excavated streets could be done just for, you know, avoiding the crap also. right? Because the crab would be falling down from those roads to the bottom and completely flooding all these areas. You could be using those houses because horse crab is the best theory that they have right now, right? So no cultural layer, no house crab. So see you in part number 2, guys, because we're gonna review more. Hello people, it's part number 2. Let's imagine us walking around in ancient times and finding this oil well which was abandoned by some mining group of the ancient times. And we open this plastic nipple or whatever covers it, and we can see that the well is boiling. It's boiling inside and some type of gas is coming out. As you know, miners use different technology. If this vertical drilling technology, it's mostly well known. There's also horizontal drilling technology, which lets us get more efficiency out of mining. But whatever you mine, you have to cement your well or channel where you take your resources from. Either it's gas or just crude or oil or whatever you call it. And as you can see, the soil has many layers, including groundwaters and so-called isolation layers, which are majorly look like clay or something like this. So if the system is very not much sealed, the water can come through the layers and attack layers that are above or close to the water pressure in well, because it's often used to increase the oil drilling procedures, right? So it's well known, and majorly all the oil companies right now that we know are located in Siberia, and most of the companies are located in northern parts of northern hemisphere, although we know a bunch of them in the southern one. But the northern one, and as you know, miners work pretty much a lot, and they have shifts and all this stuff, so they often get boring and playing with their equipment. But I don't think that they would be not using very good technique to seal the well or drilling well after they're done. So they have a bunch of technologies, and they not only screwing around while they have in shifts, they also follow some rules, some objectives, some I don't know, some orders of their bosses, and they follow some techniques of safety while sealing the well. So it's it's hard for me to imagine if they wouldn't be sealing it very good, because it would be a great problem for their companies to leave the wells unsealed. So why do we see those boiling gases there? Perhaps the technology is never changing. You have to create some works that checking the well, its sustainability, preservation, all this stuff that could be important while you sealing it. And you have so many different pipes that you have to put inside the well, so you can make sure that you're doing the right thing. You follow the rules, you follow the technology of sealing after you're done, and you get paid a bunch of money, and it's a highly technological, very practical system, and people earn their money on it. If they can't seal the well of gas or oil drilling, they wouldn't be paying, they wouldn't be getting paid for that, right? And so in ancient times, if they were actually drilling and mining back then, I doubted that they would be sealing their holes, their drilling holes, their wells. And probably they were using also this cement or some chlorine or lime solutions to feel the pressure that was taken by the oilers before them, so they can equalize the pressure of the well, so it won't be unsealed. And that's why they use all these different techniques of mixing stuff, and they know the formulas of how it's supposed to be working, right? And they're doing it step by step, and they're sealing and sealing and sealing and sealing, and using the cement and all this stuff. And finally they do it, and they seal the well and make a safety cap on the side, and even put their signature. So just imagine that a bunch of those wells were looking like this, with the boiling gas inside, and looking very abandoned. It could be happening only if you cannot maintain your wells, if the technology is lost, if something happened before that the civilization of miners just left all this stuff like this, and you just have to manage and finally find a way to keep those wells out of reach of different groups like children and all this stuff, so they can, hurt themselves or maybe even explode, because it's a gas, it can burn, and it can, create huge explosions. So what I'm starting to, follow this mining theory of the mud flood, I want you to listen what Senator Cruz was saying when he was trying to be a president-elect during the elections.
You advocate what you call carpet bombing or saturation bombing to defeat ISIS, citing the more than 1,100 air attacks a day the U.S. carried out during the first Gulf War in 1991. Explain how a strategy to defeat a standing army would work against an unconventional terrorist group that is now hiding amongst the population.
Well, sure. It starts with a commander-in-chief that sets the objective. And the objective has to be utterly and completely destroying ISIS. Obama hasn't started with that objective, and everything else flows from there. Once you set that objective, we have the tools to carry that out. The first tool is overwhelming air power. It is one of the blessings of the United States of America having the greatest military on the face of the earth, is we have the ability to use that air power. As you noted, the first Persian Gulf War, it was 1,100 air attacks a day. Obama is launching between 15 and 30. Now, when I say saturation carpet bombing, that's not indiscriminate. That is targeted at oil facilities. It's targeted at the oil tankers. It's targeted at command and control locations. It's targeted at infrastructure. It's targeted at communications. It's targeted at bombing all of the roads and bridges going in and out of Raqqa. It's using overwhelming air power. A couple of weeks ago, it was reported that a facility is open called Jihadist University. Now the question I wonder, why is that building still standing? It should be rubble. And if you had a president, although I will say this, I would be willing to wait until freshman orientation before launching those bombs.
Senator Cruz, would you like to expand or loosen the rules of engagement? I was just over in a command center in Erbil, and they said they thought the rules of engagement worked because you have so many civilians in those populated areas. They don't want to hit civilians.
Martha, I will tell you, I have visited with active duty military, with veterans over and over and over again in town halls all over the state of New Hampshire. What we are doing to our sons and daughters, it is immoral. We are sending them in to fight with their arms tied behind their back. They cannot defend themselves, and it is wrong. And I will tell you this, look, America has always been reluctant to use military force. It's the last step we take. But if and when we use it, when it comes to defeating ISIS, we should use it. We should use overwhelming force, kill the enemy, and then get the heck out. Don't engage in nation building, but instead allow our soldiers to do their jobs instead of risking their lives with politicians making it impossible for them to accomplish the objective.
So what I'm trying to say is the war that was supposedly between the slashed ego empire of Holy Romans and the Great Tartaria was supposedly in the favor of Holy Romans, which bombed the hell out of the Great Tartaria. And that's why these countries disappeared from the books, and this country is not well known. And what we know as so-called the information about Great Tartaria came not that far ago, so you understand that. And what we know as so-called plaque columns and all this stuff, just the representation of all those events that happened during those mining wells blowing up and throwing a whole bunch of mud and stuff in the air. So this is one of the theories that we have right now, and this is the working theory. In next part I'm going to be talking about the other one, the theory of the gas. So see you later. Bye. Hi guys, this is the third part of documentary that I was making. Material was collected for several years, as you know, but still many evidences coming up each and every day. So this walk was like an ordinary walk towards Kremlin. I was supposed to film some evidence there, and I started to film right away from the Kudrinskaya Square. As you guys can see, plenty of buried windows. In fact, those buildings look like Tartarian style and antique style. We see the signs of rebuilding, that it was different than it was before, and it looks like some buildings don't have those buried windows, but if you check when they were building, they were built in the end of 19th century. That's why those buildings don't have those buried windows, although they look like neo-Russian style, so-called neo-Russian style. Right now it's an embassy of Brazil. As we walk forward, we can see another great building, replaced or bricked up window in the corner. And plenty of buildings like this, when you see totally excavated first floor, and even they make an entrance after renovation, so people can use those ground floors, which were actually buried with this mud flood of 19th century. But people criticize, sometimes they say that mud flood doesn't fit in what we see, that it's better to be called a dust bowl. Well, I'm not quite arguing about that. If you have indisputable proof of a dust bowl, just send me a link, I'll check it out and probably say a couple of words about it. As you guys know, I made a video about mud flood signs. If you haven't watched it, just check it out to understand what are the mud flood signs, because people sometimes take those buried windows like everywhere, because sometimes it's just a basement floor. So the mud flood signs are a replacement of the window and creating a door like here. Also, if you can walk in, you can, go and go downstairs and check out by yourself. So you should see some bricked up windows, bricked up doors leading to nowhere. Well, I'm not gonna just mention all those signs right now. Just go and check out the video so you can say what I'm talking about. And the Tartarian style is not always the Tartarian style also. So people think about calling each and every building a Tartarian style. At least at 17th, 19th century, we have this 200 years of guessing. So that's why I'm concerned about 19th century, because at least we have some pictures, photo pictures, not only paintings. It could be painted easily. It's a funny thing that about 2-3 years ago nobody was talking about it, except maybe a couple guys in Russia. So we're researching this topic since like 3 years ago, very deep, and it came from start from my own home city, when I knew this building was what it was. I was walking around it each and every day when I was going home, and I knew that building, and they excavated it, and I saw those buried windows and doors and bricked up right now. So right now I'm walking in Moscow and watching all the same evidence. So those are trying to confuse us and say that it's not a mud flood or it's a dust bowl or whatever, we don't care what's the case. Actually, it's no problem for us. But in the second part, I tried to start to explain what I'm talking about when I'm talking about mining and fracking. So those red brick buildings are like everywhere in Russia. We have them in a bunch of towns and bunch of cities, and most of them have underground 2-3 buried floors, and in fact very strange architecture. Of course you can find a bunch of buildings like this in Moscow. Sometimes people just don't care, they walk around and just like I was back when I was in Omsk, my home city. Moscow has a bunch of bricks buildings, and most of them have replacement in windows. As you can see from the side of those buildings, we have brick windows also, and replaced windows which are different size and they look really strange. But if you walk around, this is across the street, but if you walk around, these buildings, you can understand that they were rebuilt a couple of times, at least a couple of times, and you also can find those buried windows which are now used as a basement floors, and sometimes we have like 2, 3, 4 basement floors. That's why I was going to Kremlin to check out any evidence of that. Couple of new channels in English segment of YouTube showing a bunch of new videos in different countries, different towns, different cities. So it's not just in Moscow, as you can see, but Moscow has plenty of it, plenty. It's one of the biggest cities that contains all this evidence right now. Also St. Petersburg, you might as well check my video about St. Petersburg. I hope it will be not the last one, because St. Petersburg also has a lot of evidence. And people send me videos from Denver, Kansas, Seattle, New York. I might as well do a video on that in this series with the worldwide evidence, as I was supposed to. So I was walking to Kremlin. It was kind of snowy day, as you can see. Everything was like melting, and beautiful views on ancient buildings with antique style was everywhere. So was the evidence of buried windows and reconstruction on those buildings. So I came close to Kremlin, and it was like about quarter mile to it, so I really like those buildings near the Kremlin. They have so many evidence. Most of them collect underground routes, which were probably the inner building connection pathways before, and even streets of the previous cities. But right now they are all buried and used by the commercial organizations and government, maybe also with the security of FSB and all those kind of structures. It's law enforcement and special agents, of course, that use them. You can also find museums in those buildings, so go downstairs, check this evidence out, like you can do it in Germany, in Berlin, in many different other cities. Even on the hills we have buried windows, so that's just an evidence of total excavation in Moscow. Yeah, so many years passed, so we can only guess who and when was excavating. But we'll try to open up this mystery, this Pandora box, which is really a pain in the butt of modern science or modern history. The mud flood of 19th century. In September I came here, tried to, come in, but a bunch of tourists were in the line, so I couldn't. I also tried to explain about this difference of level. As you can see, people walking under the bridge, which leads towards the tower, the entrance of the pedestrian entrance, tourist entrance, whatever you call it. Here it is. So there was a river before. Now this river is on the ground. In fact, we don't know how and when it was actually done, but we see it's a brick tunnel which the river is flowing right now. And we have a bunch of pictures which Kremlin looks abandoned. So this is the tower, this is the entrance, and I was figured that I should enter and walk around the Kremlin to see if we have any evidence. In fact, I knew that there were some evidence. And this is the entrance. So I came, took my cameras so I could, film it on video and on photo. Ticket here would cost you about 15 bucks, or maybe even more. I don't know. So it's like a tourist area where you can enter and have a special security, so you can get search. So check out if you don't have any prohibited items. So this is the filming of another guy who also went the same marshroute, but he had some guy who was escorting him, and he brought him inside. I was promoting this guy. His name is Evgeny Makarov. He's also a researcher of Mudflood, has a bunch of subscribers in Russia. So he was, he was entering this palace, Kremlin Palace, and got downstairs a couple of floors, and he was wondering how many floors down he could get for free, because he didn't have any special permissions for that, as you can see. He was like walking around, trying to, except maybe this guy was, escorting him for some certain point, and showed him those letters here. So he got three floors below, and checked this door, and also saw 3 more floors down, so it's already 6. Searched the whole building and found out that at least 6 floors or even more is under this building. So the level actually explains why is it so high and why is it buried inside the Kremlin. Just because it was buried inside. So Evgeny actually stepped down 3 floors more, so it's like 6 floors on the ground, and he saw another door which he didn't have any permission to enter, of course. So he supposes that some more downstairs is there. As he gets out of the building, he calculated that 6 floors, at least 6 floors in this Kremlin Palace are underground right now. Of course, you can say it's a Soviet job, Soviets did it, but there's many things that we should explore, because the physical evidence is what we can see is fitting in what we can observe. So my walk actually continued. I was walking through this Kremlin main square. It's an entrance square. Some administration buildings here where you cannot enter, of course, and plenty of guards here watching, looking around that nobody runs or doing something stupid. Please never do it here if you go here and visit this place, but it's all friendly and really nothing strange or weird is going on here right now. Just a bunch of historical buildings in the same place, in the same area, so tourists can pay and watch them and take some pictures, selfies and stuff like this. But no one does understand. No one understands that so many underground floors is underneath the place we're walking around. Officials do distract the tourists with those cannon expositions. It looks like people could carry those cannons with those handles or whatever. And it's really astonishing architecture. I can't just believe that this was all made just for praying. And so we're on the way to continue the research on the ancient technologies and ancient wireless energy sources. And this is the Tsar cannon. It's a mortier type. They say it was, in use, but I doubt. I think it's decorative and never was used. Or maybe they lied to us and it was used for something else. Tsar bell, one of the biggest bells I've ever seen, maybe the biggest one. In fact, they say it's the hugest one, but who knows? Was it working, or was it just a toy for some? Or was it just a gigantic bell from an ancient tower or something like this? Maybe this whole area is just the ruins of the ancient temple. And this is me, in fact, I'm picturing it. There was a bunch of people this day, some type of Christmas activities or something. It's kind of easy to imagine how it was before, when those people in ancient times gathered here on the square, listening to what officials say, whatever. And the mass of the people is just incredible. People concentrate here. They sneak in, although the tickets are sold. They sneak in here and just, hang around, check out those sites. A bunch of churches here in the same place. So it's like a huge concentrated area of ancient artifacts. And all those buildings are some type of museums or something like this. And I should come back here in the summer and film some inside evidence. As you can see, some barred windows also could be seen. Another pathetic bell exposition here. And here is the end of Kremlin Square. This is an embankment. In fact, this is a view on the river. And here's this palace that Evgeny was walking around. He also made a video a year ago, something like this, about the signs of the mud flood in Kremlin. And he was showing all this dirt inside, all this mud, and it looks like pretty much wet walls and stuff like this, and level of flooding and excavation is, as he can say, is seen. Strange marks on the wall show us that some maybe the walls were wet. Also the windows look weird, and those stones look like an old pavement of some constructions that were ruined. So just cleaning up the streets like this. In fact, in the 1884 this picture was made, and it looks pretty much cleaned up already. It's all leveled, 1884, and 6 years before we have another picture when we see the excavation right there in the same place. Probably 4 to 5 feet of excavated was proceeded there, and it's not enough to say just it was done perfectly. As you can see, there's still more mud underneath. So look at this compared to the human man's height, right? 4 feet at least. So probably was done in different stages, so it's like you cannot just excavate the whole area at the same time. So you like split the job for a couple of stages, so nobody can, you know, actually figure out what was going on. This is the exact place where it was performed, and that's the palace Evgeny was walking around. As you can see, the level, it's like a maybe 6th floor building. So no wonder he found at least 6 floors underneath. We can see one buried floor here also on the front line. That's a heck of a hill, you can say. But who knows what it actually was before. At least the undergrounds are not hidden from us, and some still can visualize them if they can enter. So it's the end of this part of Kremlin, and we should come back, and also gonna show you some pictures from this walk with maybe some more specific details. As you can see, you also can see buried windows and signs of different reconstruction. From one side it's just an ordinary building, from the other side it looks like it's not even solid enough, because they have those walls in pyramid form so they can support. As I've promised, a couple of detailed pictures, a little slideshow in the end. So this is where it ends. I'm coming out of this Spasskaya tower with the clock, with a bunch of interesting information about the clock. It's coming up in some next videos, maybe as soon as I can be done with Star Force, which is the part number 4 is the documentary. You understand how all those fortresses like Kremlin and many different Star Forces could be connected to the mudflat, fracking, mining, and gas. Thanks a lot for watching. I see you later, guys.